Asian American Pacific Islander Nurses Association of Nevada presents Healthy Mondays with Apina of Nevada. Start the week healthy and right with interesting conversations on living a healthy lifestyle. And now, your Healthy Mondays host, Dr. Marife Aczon-Armstrong.
Aloha! Good evening. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Naimbag asardam, maayong gabi sa inyong tanan. I'm yours truly, Dr. Marife Aczon-Armstrong, founding president of the Asian American Pacific Islander Nurses Association of Nevada and professor in nursing at Roseman University of Health Sciences College of Nursing. So here we are on a Monday night again. So if you have not seen our podcast and broadcast last February 28 and replayed on March 7, please do so. Dr. Tanya Sorrell shared the history of Henrietta Lacks, who has a forever living cells that contributed to the development of vaccines, and also Mary Seacole, who was a nurse practitioner in the front lines of the conflict during the Crimean War. So great stories. So please do and watch those episodes in celebration of the International Women's Month. This month, March 2022. So really, why do we celebrate Women's Month? Since the 1980s, March has been nationally recognized and celebrated as Women's History Month, and it's an incredible opportunity to shine light on women-focused causes, organizations, and charities to support this month's cause this month and beyond. Women's History Month provides an opportunity for us to reflect on the time, physical labor, emotional labor women have historically contributed to advance opportunities for people of all genders. And we are also dipping with the celebration of the Women's History and International Women's Day, celebrated annually to commemorate the cultural, political, and socioeconomic achievements of women. It also aims to highlight issues of gender inequality and is a great opportunity to raise money for charities that support women. So tonight, I have my nursing colleagues with me to help me celebrate International Women's Month. Dr. Kathy D'Amico, she wants to be called Kathy, and also Professor Nancy Bryan. Welcome to Healthy Mondays. Kathy, do you want to say hi to our listeners out there?
I'm pleased to be with everyone here and pleased to share things for Healthy Monday. In fact, I certainly, besides Healthy Monday for International Women's Month, please feel free to invite me again to talk about things that we can do as nurses and as women to help people stay healthy and help them stay connected with what they need for their own care.
Yeah. Thank you for agreeing to be our guest tonight. Professor Nancy Bryan, welcome to Healthy Mondays. Do you want to say hi to our listeners?
Thank you. Hello to everyone. And I'm going to be covering the ethnicity, the cultural part of contributions to International Women's Day from the Jewish perspective in history.
And I think, thank you, Nancy. Kathy and Nancy, I bet you didn't know that I'm going to have you share with us about your cultural background and how it was and how it is growing up in your respective family background and as a girl into a woman. So, Nancy, would you like to start?
Oh, okay. Well, my background, I come from a very large family, lots of siblings, and of course, we were all encouraged to be our own individual people. We are all encouraged not to focus on our gender for what goals we wanted to reach in life. And that's how we began the journey into independence and our contributions to our community, and obviously to women for the sisters in the family, and men for the men in the family.
Thanks, Nancy. How about you, Kathy?
So I grew up in a family. I have two younger brothers. My dad grew up in a very large family. My mother was an only child raised by herself by her mother and her grandparents. So because of my mom's background and because my father came from a very large family, my father always knew that he had one sister who was a school teacher, and she went to school at night to do both her bachelor's degree and her master's degree so that she could become a school teacher in New York City. And I always had my aunt, besides my mother as a role model for homemaking and encouraging me to excel in school and excel on doing things that were my interests. I had this role model of an aunt who never married, who was self-sufficient, and in fact really cared for both my grandparents while she was a school teacher. So I think a role model like that of a woman who really excelled at her career was one of the things that was really helpful for me as a young person.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, I think I'm obliged to also share my story. Typical Filipino family with 11 children, 6 boys and 5 girls. We're just short of one child to be a dozen, and so my mom and dad are a typical Filipino couple. My mom was only, I think, my mom was only 14 years old when she married my dad, and my dad was about 25 years old. And I think this is during World War II when they got together. So they experienced the Japanese War, when the Japanese occupied the Philippines, and they tell us a lot of stories about their experiences. Typical family. 6 boys is always picking on me, throwing me into the lake because we used to live in I grew up in Laguna Bay. So there's a lake behind us, and they will just pick me up. We'll be on the boat, and they'll pick me up and throw me in the water. But I never learned how to swim. But anyway, there were just great memories in the Philippines. So tonight, I wanted to, I guess, Kathy, if you wanted to share about your background and what aspects of cultural values that shape you more into the person that you are, the woman that you are today.
So I think both my parents were, I want to say spiritual, not necessarily religious. They both had a deep belief that there was an underlying support structure, a God, if if you have for another way to look at it, and that we should all work not only for our own good and for ourselves, but for the good of others. And so that's part of how I grew up. And of course, I also grew up with celebrations of holidays, particularly holidays that we sometimes look as having a underlying religious belief, where there were many traditions, things that my grandmother cooked and things that my mother cooked, or certain ways that we prepared for the holidays as a whole. And I think that I carried that into my education, and I continue to carry that into the way that I care for people as a nurse, is that everybody has a spiritual need, and that I want to be able to help people know where they want to be with that spiritual need. And so that was absolutely part of what was there for us. My mom was not a Roman Catholic, but we were raised as Roman Catholics, and my mother promised that she would raise us as Roman Catholics when she married my dad, and she believed that she had to carry through that promise, that this was her duty to carry through that promise, and she would learn everything she needed to know about Roman Catholicism so that she could teach us. Wow. So I think that also that kind of feeling of duty that she gave to me is another piece. And I saw some of those things in terms of raising my own children. There was a duty to make sure that they had moral values and ethical values and things like that come from some of those things. And that's really where I was with as I raised my children, and I carry on now with my marriage of almost 48 years.
Wow, 40 years.
Oh, excuse me.
Congratulations.
I am married 48. We're going on 49.
Wow.
Wow.
One more year it will be golden, right? Oh,
Yes.
that's the next year. But thank you so much for sharing that story. Now we're gonna switch to Nancy. I know I'm excited to hear about Nancy's.
Okay. Well, in my background, my parents' philosophy was the following: always to be involved in the community, always to do the right thing. At the end of the day, to look at what did you do for others, and that I was raised in quite a solid spiritual base. It was a very open spiritual base in that we were all taught, myself and my siblings, that uh, what what matters is, again, that you have a belief in that spiritual existence of the one God, and that if you migrate toward another religion, as long as it is a religion is based on that one God and that helps you to do for others, then that's the right place for you. So, you know, siblings, they went off in their own directions and they found their own spiritual base where they could be totally involved in the community and helping others. So I think that was that's such a gift of freedom, spiritual freedom, and for all of us that our parents gave us.
Well, kudos to our parents because look, they produced three dedicated professional nurse educators, right?
Mhm.
So kudos to our parents. So I know there's so much to talk about, and I know with Kathy and I both taught care of older adults and nursing research. And then with Nancy, I taught care of older adults in, I think, community and mental health nursing, right?
Mhm.
So
And I'm going to teach care of older adults with Nancy starting the end of next month.
Oh, wow.
So we have that.
An
We
exciting-
all have that mutual connection.
Yes, an exciting journey.
And it's very fitting that we are celebrating International Women's Awareness Month because look at the rich culture that we're bringing to our listeners out there. So I know Nancy had shared with me some things that she wanted to talk about, and I'm going to give her this platform to share some things that she talked about the International Women's Day,
Okay.
right?
With International Women's Day, of course, every Jewish person, every observant Jewish person, they need to have a library, and they need to be able to refer back to our history and current, also current concerns and contributions. So I'm a big history buff, and I looked into International Women's Day, and I found the greatest article that had to do with remembering Queen Esther.
Yes.
We have Purim. This is a kind of a carnival holiday that honors Queen Esther. This year it's March 16th, so this is very appropriate. And we're looking at a queen, very dedicated Jew, that was quite determined and had lots of courage. She had an extraordinary role in Jewish history wherein she did save the Jews. So that's
She truly did.
Yeah,
she
she did.
truly saved the Jewish people during her
did.
time.
She was chosen by King Ahasuerus for her beauty. But if you really look back into history, he was also mesmerized by her intelligence, her knowledge. And he, at the time, before Queen Esther, he was married to another wife named Vashti. And she was asked one day to entertain his troops, let's say, or his cabinet, in a quite, shall we say, not exactly PG way. And she
PG
so
way.
she refused. She stood up for herself.
Yeah.
She stood up for herself, and she protected herself, and she knew that this would end her reign as the queen. But it was more important to stand up for herself and do what was right for herself. So she was dismissed. The advisors and the king had a fear that, and this was occurring in Persia, of course, that women would become strong like Vashti and not listen to their husbands. So the other reason why she was dismissed as a queen. She was banned from Persia. So he sought to get another queen, and they had sort of a beauty contest going on, and Queen Esther came along. She was prodded by her uncle who raised her. Her mother died in childbirth. The father died defending his country. And he said, you need to maybe try to be the queen, and you can do something good for our Jewish community with that power. So she won the beauty contest. King Ahasuerus did not know that she was Jewish. She hid that from him and knew that at some time that would be very important. At some point, some of his military people had plotted to kill the Jews. First one being Uncle Mordecai, because he stood up to them. So she said, "Oh, okay, I guess this time I better tell the king. I better come clean." So she confessed that she was Jewish and told him of the plot, and they set up, something, a sting, shall we say, and they caught the military men, and she saved her uncle, and she saved the Jews from extinction. There is where this whole story stops. We don't know what happened to Queen Esther after that. We don't know if she stayed with the king or not, but she did. As we know, in the world of spirituality, you're here for a purpose, and she fulfilled her purpose. So when we look at Queen Esther, we look at the fact that she was very courageous, just as we hope that all women are thinking about in this month of International Women's Day and celebrating it. We know that we need to support other women that are courageous and want to do the right thing, as Queen Esther did, as we're celebrating all women, and that we should not just look at today. As she looked at the future of all Jews, she looked at the big picture, and she looked at moving forward. What do we need to do? Not looking for immediate gratification. So when we compare that spiritually, we look at Esther as kind of a tool. There's God, and she's kind of the marionette. He's pulling the strings to make sure that she accomplishes great things to save let's call it a body of people. And we too can look toward that spiritual element and know that God is in charge and pulling the strings, and that when we do what's the right thing, that we are fulfilling something that he's directing us to do. And I think that ties in really well to International Women's Day. So get out there and support those women that yourself and other women that you recognize as very strong women that have a future goal for women and basically for our community and society in general. And again, support them and help them to be vocal in succeeding with what they're trying to do, improving the lives of women worldwide.
Wow. Thank you, Nancy, for sharing Esther. I actually, I think we had maybe several months ago, maybe at least 3 months ago, we started talking about that because I was at the time doing a precept upon precept women's Bible study, and we were learning about Esther. We're going through the book of Esther. I remember her obedience to her mentor, which is Mordecai, and also her courage, because I think Mordecai warned her that if you don't move now, do something now for the Jewish people, not only us Jewish people who is going to perish, you will perish too.
Yes.
So she mustered her courage, because I think during that time you cannot enter the king's court without being called. And then if you go in without being called, you can be beheaded, right?
Yes.
So she just stood there outside and just, I guess, displayed her beauty. And then the king caught her eye. The king, noticed her, and then motioned her with his scepter, right?
Yes.
And motioned her to go in. And so that started her being able to speak on behalf of the Jewish people. Wow, that was really a powerful story, and really shows her, even though there's the reason why she ended up being the queen, right? There's
Right.
another,
And we always look at, what as women, our voice is very powerful. And we know that we always need to maybe sleep on something before we bring it out and we talk about it. And how can we compare that to Queen Esther? Well, Esther fasted for 3 days before she went to see the king, so she was quite weak and worn out, but it was her time of reflection, and was she doing the right thing and following along with what Mordecai, another tool of God, was asking her to do.
She had a plan, and God had a plan too.
Yes.
So I guess the other Bible figure that I could relate to is Ruth, with her following her mother-in-law.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know Kathy is
And Ruth,
familiar
and
with that.
I read about Ruth. Ruth,
Yes.
my mom left me a book about let me become part of your people, and that's about Ruth, and Ruth coming forward and saying, even though she was from what most Christians would call a pagan society, could she
Yes.
move forward and become part of that? But even as we look through the rest of the Judeo-Christian stuff, there are many times when women are strong in all the Judeo-Christian writings. When we look at Mary Magdalene and we look at other women, Lazarus's sisters, in the New Testament stuff, we have to look at the idea that women were always supposed to be, based on looking at this kind of work, women were always supposed to be people who could move things forward, that they didn't need to step back, that they could have a voice, and that they should have a voice and help to move some of these things forward, especially injustices, or for people to understand that you could repent, and that you could change how you were if you wanted to follow a new path and be something different. And I think that that's an important piece for any women, and especially in an international woman's thing, is that the woman can be the strong person who says, no, wait, I'm not going to sit here to do this. I need to be the person who steps forward and says, we need to look at this differently.
I remember, yeah, that's right. I remember when I get transferred from the outpatient area when I was working at Queens Medical Center, and I transferred to the emergency department as a nurse case manager. And often I would hear people that, oh, you have to have thick skin in order to work in the emergency department. So I know I mentioned this in the previous podcast, that I feel like I don't have to change who I am. I feel like is the way that I will communicate. I don't have to unwomanize myself in order to do my role, right? I can remain as a woman and then be able to do what I need to do my purpose. And I just think about Mother Teresa. Look at Mother Teresa. She had impact a lot of people with her words, with her actions, and she didn't have to be a man, right? She remained as a true nun who is helping other people in need, and she really inspire a lot of people. So
when we look at it, most nurses are women. We're still, the majority of nurses are women. The three of us have a real connection into caring for older adults. And so part of our role as nurses in caring for older adults is to be the person who advocates for these people. You're the person who says to the physician, to the family, to the pharmacist when they can't get their meds filled. You're the person who's advocating for them to get what they need so that they can be well and stay functional in a community. And that's part of what we do. And I think one of the reasons that many of us have been drawn to nursing is because that gives us an opportunity professionally to have that kind of a role.
Exactly. I think that caring. I remember when my kids or my friends' kids will get sick, even though they spend more time with their dad. Who do they call when they get sick? Mom, because they know the woman's touch, the mom's touch, right? So it's very fitting that we are celebrating women this month, because then all these things that women are doing on behalf of our family, sometimes they're kind of like pushed on the side, and now is the time to celebrate the women.
Listen, a woman who runs a home, who doesn't have a job outside the home, keeps a budget, keeps it clean, and keeps and does all kinds of childcare and is the person who's responsible for the growth and development of those children. So that it's not just a housewife or just a stay-at-home mom. Those just a stay-at-home people have lots of responsibilities that are sometimes negated, that we don't really look at. How did I learn how to do a budget for any administrative role I came into? By knowing how to budget for my own household. Because we didn't learn how to budget as part of what we did when we were studying nursing as undergraduates. We learned that people had to have a budget, but where we learned to budget was from our moms for a household and for ourselves with our own households. So we take a lot of those things that we learned from our moms and from aunts who were role models or other strong role models and move that forward.
Yeah, we've come a long way. I mean, I'm sure our listeners out there they're gonna agree that we've come a long way. The history where women just stay home and expected to take care of their family, and then now because of economy, we are now having to, in addition to taking care of our family at home, we are now having to have a job, right, Nancy?
Oh, absolutely. So we're kind of like the Renaissance person.
We're in the Renaissance. We're jack of all trades. We're doing
Yes.
everything. So,
And
yeah.
I heard many years ago a clergy person, a male, on Mother's Day state motherhood, what the duties of a woman are in the household, what the duties are of a woman raising a family. That's the toughest job in the whole world.
Absolutely is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So the next time, our listeners out there, so the next time you go in the groceries, supermarket, and you see a woman struggling with the little kids, running around, I see during our
Be
pinning.
supportive.
Yeah.
Yes. So be kind. You don't know the story behind what's happening in front of you.
Right.
Struggling. I think I'm gonna share during our pinning ceremony last Monday. There were they look like twins, and they're on the side, and the faculty sitting here, and the little kids were just making a lot of noises. I don't know if you were there, and
Yeah.
we just felt sorry for the mom, and she was just so embarrassed. So anyway, to be kind, if you see a woman struggling with trying to handle all their kids, there's a lot of things that you don't know behind that.
Lend a hand, be supportive.
Yes.
I've often said to women in the grocery store, "Can I stand in the way so he can't get any further down the aisle for you?" And they say, "Thank you."
What we do, women. So, wow, time flies when we're having fun, Nancy and Kathy. I always ask my special guest one word of wisdom that they can give to our listeners out there and relate to International Women's Month. Maybe
Be a role model for others.
Yeah.
yes.
And recognize other women for what they're doing at the time. Look at them as heroines and lend your support.
And be kind to your mom. Give your mom a hug today, right?
Right.
So, and hugs mean so much. It means so much. So, and tell them you love them. I love you, mom. So,
The human touch.
yes. So,
And you don't know how much you love your mom until you miss her.
yes. Remember that. So, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Nancy, for being our special guest tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. PHLV Radio, Johan and Flora, thank you for giving us this platform to bring this information to our listeners out there and celebrate our women in our lives during International Women's Month. So remember, our listeners out there, remember, every Monday is a healthy Monday. Aloha.
Aloha.
The Asian American Pacific Islander Nurses Association of Nevada has just brought you Healthy Mondays with Apina of Nevada.